This man unalived one of his closest friends and then helped her family search for her, all while knowing exactly where she was the entire time. 21-year-old Catalina Gutierrez was born on February 7th, 2003 in Argentina to her parents Eleonora and Marcelo. She grew up in a very tight-knit household, and inspired by her architect father, Catalina pursued a career in architecture and enrolled at the Cordoba National University, where she was known for being very responsible and enthusiastic in her studies, always trying her best to get really good grades. Out of school, Catarina enjoyed spending time with her relatively new boyfriend Ezequiel and with her friends, going out for drinks, to parties, or just casual hangouts. Which brings us to Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. That day, Catarina planned to go bowling in the evening with her friends at the Patio Olmos Mall. So Catalina asked her mom to borrow her car and she left. Now, she was running a little bit behind since earlier she was with her boyfriend Ezequiel and his family, who were in town visiting. At 9:22 p.m., Catarina sent a voice message to Ezequiel saying that she was on her way to meet with her friends because, again, he was not going since he had family in town visiting. But time went by and Catalina never arrived at the bowling alley to meet with her friends. None of them could reach her by text or call. They were beginning to get worried. Ezequiel got word of this and he also couldn't get in touch with his girlfriend. He decided to call one of Catalina's close friends, Nestor, who was part of the bowling outing. Ezequiel asked if he had heard from Catalina, but Nestor told him that he had waited for Catalina at the bowling alley but left after she didn't show up, saying that she stood him up as always. Ezequiel then spoke to Catalina's mom, Eleonora, who confirmed that Catalina wasn't at home either, which just increased everyone's worry. Catalina's sister, Lucia, found out that her sister's phone location had pinged at Nestor's house less than an hour earlier, but Nestor insisted that he hadn't seen her when Eleonora asked him about this. Now, Ezequiel also confronted Nestor about this, about why his girlfriend's phone was pinging at his house, but his vague response just made Ezequiel feel really uneasy, and he decided to go straight to Nestor's house to check it out for himself. And he didn't see any sign of Catalina there either. Ezequiel then told Nestor to get in his car so that they could begin searching, just driving around the area trying to find any sign of her. On the other hand, Catalina's family were also searching for her at the same time, and they also reported her as missing to the police. Shortly after, the sister Lucia updated Ezequiel saying that Catalina's phone was no longer pinging at Nestor's house, but was now in an area called Las Flores. Police also headed to this location and they found a gray Renault Clio, the car that Catalina had borrowed from her mom. Upon inspection, they discovered Catalina's body in the back seat, with evidence of someone attempting to light the car and Catalina on fire. Just a few minutes later, Lucia called Ezequiel, delivering the heartbreaking news that Catalina was found dead. Ezequiel heard this and he just stumbled out of the car shouting in disbelief. Nestor was also shouting that he just couldn't believe this, and he was grabbing his head and just acting very devastated and confused. They both then went straight to the police station to meet with Catalina's family. Nestor was hugging her mom repeatedly and asking himself, who could have done this to her? Authorities began questioning everyone closest to Catalina, and when it was Nestor's turn, he appeared very nervous and he was giving very inconsistent statements about his whereabouts at night, before breaking down and confessing to unaliving Catalina. Less than 30 minutes after his questioning began, Nestor was placed into handcuffs and he was arrested. With his confession to unaliving Catalina, investigators began to explore his and Catalina's relationship, learning that Nestor exhibited obsessive behavior towards her and would become very jealous every time she spent time with her new boyfriend. Friends told investigators that they believed Nestor had feelings for her, but that she just didn't feel the same way and she had a boyfriend. During a search of Nestor's apartment, investigators found Catalina's ring, locks of her hair, as well as damp clothes in his washer, suggesting an attempt to get rid of evidence. Investigators also had key video footage showing Nestor dragging Catalina's body out of his apartment to her car and then driving to where he abandoned it. Now, investigators hypothesized that Nestor became very upset when Catalina was running late to meet everyone at the bowling alley, and again believed that she stood him up and that made him upset. So they believe that he called Catalina to go meet him at his apartment, where an argument then ensued. While Nestor was in preventative prison, preliminary autopsy results showed Catalina died from asphyxiation due to strangulation after being violently beaten. She had multiple bruises and burns on her body, and her wrists were tied with tape. The autopsy ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning, which was an initial theory, given that the car had burn marks, and SA was also ruled out. While investigations continued, Catalina's family said their final goodbyes, and they chose to have her remains cremated and scattered in Achiras, their hometown. Nestor's trial finally began on March 6, 2025, where he faced charges of aggravated with malice and gender-based violence, aka femicide, possibly facing a 35-year sentence. During the trial, testimonies revealed Nestor's obsessive and controlling behavior towards not only Catalina, but other female friends as well. He would demand that they spend all their time with him or just constantly text him, and would get mad if they didn't. They also said Nestor would vent to them about Catalina pushing him aside once she got her new boyfriend. Nestor even had a whiteboard in his room with all his female friends' class schedules on it, which is just insane. He constantly displayed jealousy in his friendships, which led to many of them to fizzle out, while others distanced themselves from him due to his, very creepy and obsessive behavior. Catalina remained friends with him, hoping that one day he would change. But unfortunately, he didn't. Experts later evaluated Nestor, identifying narcissistic traits and confirming that he was aware of his actions during the crime. Now, his side of the story and messages exchanged with Catalina before her death were revealed during the trial as well. Nestor claimed that when Catalina arrived at his apartment to pick him up to go bowling together, they argued inside his apartment and she allegedly slapped him. He stated that then he hit her, apologized, but then they began fighting on the floor. Nestor admitted to her and later described his thoughts on how to dispose of her body, which is how he landed on abandoning her inside her car and then attempting to light it on fire to hide his crime. He said he also thought about even unaliving himself because he just felt so guilty about what he did, but claimed that he wasn't brave enough to do so. Now, he did address Catalina's family during the trial and expressed deep regret, stating that he committed murder, not femicide, and insisted that he was not the person he was being portrayed as. In fact, his defense attorney even tried to argue that he was gay and that he couldn't be in love with Catalina and that he couldn't have done this because he was in love with her. In the end, he was found guilty and was sentenced to 35 years. Nestor's apology had little meaning for Catalina's family since he robbed them of their daughter's life and of their happiness. Catalina had a heart of gold and Nestor took advantage of that. I hope that she is resting peacefully and that Nestor remains in prison for the entire sentence. If you guys want to hear more details about this case, make sure to head over to my YouTube channel to hear more.